"Sir, you need to leave immediately, or we're calling the police." The words cut through the marble lobby like a blade, sharp and final. Darren Cole didn't flinch. He stood perfectly still at the front desk of the Ascendant Club, one hand resting on the polished counter, the other holding his phone. Around him the whispers started, low, insidious, spreading like poison through the room. He was black. He was alone. And in this world of crystal chandeliers and $1,000 memberships, that was apparently enough. But Darren wasn't afraid. He checked his watch, 14 minutes until his guest arrived. He smiled, just barely, and said nothing. What happened next would shatter careers, expose a corrupt system, and prove that the most dangerous power isn't the kind that shouts, it's the kind that waits. If you want to see how far this story reaches, drop a comment with your city below. Now, let me tell you how one man's silence became the loudest voice in the room. Darren Cole had walked through doors like these 1,000 times before. Tall, mahogany-paneled doors. The kind that whispered exclusivity before you even touched the brass handle. The kind that separated the world into two categories, those who belonged and those who didn't. The Ascendant Club sat on the 32nd floor of a glass tower in Midtown Manhattan, perched above the city like a crown. Its members were CEOs, politicians, old money families with names etched into university buildings. It was the kind of place where deals worth billions were closed over whiskey in private rooms, where silence was a currency and discretion was religion. Darren stepped off the elevator at 2:43 p.m. on a Tuesday in late September. He wore a charcoal suit tailored perfectly, with a white shirt open at the collar. No tie. His leather shoes made no sound on the travertine floor. He moved with the kind of ease that came from knowing exactly where he was going, and exactly who he was. He approached the front desk with calm purpose. Behind it sat a young woman, mid-20s, blonde hair pulled back in a sleek bun. Her name tag read Chelsea. She looked up from her computer screen, and for just a moment her eyes flickered, a quick scan, head to toe. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Good afternoon," Darren said, his voice smooth and unhurried. "I have a reservation for the Whitman Room, 2:30, under the name Cole." Chelsea's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She glanced at the screen, then back at him. Her smile tightened. "I'm sorry," she said slowly, her tone careful. "I don't see that reservation." Darren didn't react. He pulled his phone from his pocket, tapped the screen twice, and turned it toward her. The confirmation email was right there. Timestamp, reservation code, room name, all of it. "It was confirmed yesterday," he said evenly. "Whitman Room, 2:30 to 4:30. Chelsea glanced at the phone but didn't touch it. She leaned back slightly as if the screen might contaminate her. "Let me check with my manager," she said, and without waiting for a response, she stood and disappeared through a door behind the desk. Darren pocketed his phone and looked around. The lobby was vast and cathedral quiet. A handful of members sat in leather armchairs near the floor-to-ceiling windows, reading newspapers or tapping on tablets. An older white man in a navy blazer glanced up from his Wall Street Journal, his gaze lingering on Darren for a beat too long before returning to the page. Darren felt the weight of the room shift. Chelsea returned a minute later, followed by a man in his 40s with thinning brown hair and a pinched expression. His name tag identified him as Eric Donovan, front desk manager. "Good afternoon, sir," Eric said, his voice clipped and formal. "I understand there's been some confusion about a reservation?" "No confusion," Darren replied calmly. "I have a confirmed booking. Whitman Room, 2:30. Eric folded his hands on the counter. "I'm looking at our system right now, and I don't see any reservation under the name Cole." "Then your system is wrong." Eric's jaw tightened. "Our system is quite accurate, sir. Perhaps you have the wrong day or the wrong location?" Darren's expression didn't change. "I don't." "May I ask who made the reservation for you?" "I made it myself, online, 48 hours ago." Eric exchanged a glance with Chelsea. There was something unspoken in that look, something that made Darren's pulse slow, not speed up. He recognized it. He'd seen it before. "Sir," Eric said carefully, "the Ascendant Club is a members-only facility. Our private rooms are reserved exclusively for members and their registered guests. If you're not a member or if you're not accompanied by one, I'm afraid I can't grant you access." Darren let the silence stretch. He didn't blink. I'm a guest, he said quietly, and I'm meeting a member here. In 14 minutes? Eric's smile was thin and brittle. Then perhaps you could wait in the lobby downstairs until your host arrives to escort you up. I have a reservation for a private room. Without a member present, I can't allow... I have a confirmation email, a reservation code, and a credit card on file. What exactly is the problem here, Eric? The manager's face flushed. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice. Darren hadn't raised it. He stood perfectly still, hands at his sides, voice calm and measured. But around him the air in the lobby had shifted. Heads were turning now. The man with the Wall Street Journal was openly staring. Two women near the bar had stopped their conversation mid-sentence. I'm not raising my voice, Darren said quietly. I'm asking a simple question. Eric straightened. The problem, sir, is that we have no record of your reservation, and without a member present, you cannot remain on this floor. Then call the member I'm meeting. I don't have that information. It's in the reservation. There is no reservation. The repetition was deliberate, mechanical. Darren could see it now. Eric had already decided. He wasn't looking at the screen anymore. He wasn't checking anything. He was simply waiting for Darren to leave or be removed. I'm not going anywhere, Darren said, his voice dropping lower, quieter. Not until my guest arrives. Eric's expression hardened. He reached beneath the counter and pressed something, a button, a switch. Darren couldn't see it, but he knew what it was. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises. I'm a paying guest. You are trespassing. The word landed like a gavel. Darren felt the eyes on him now, dozens of them, burning into his back. The whispers started, soft, poisonous, spreading across the room like smoke. Who is that? Why is he here? Security's coming. Darren didn't move. He checked his watch. 12 minutes. I'm not trespassing, he said calmly. I have a legal reservation, and I'm not leaving. Eric's face went pale. Then I have no choice but to call security. Go ahead. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Eric pressed a button on the desk phone. Security to the front desk, immediately. Darren slid his hands into his pockets and waited. The elevator dinged. Two security guards stepped out, both white, both over 6 feet tall, both wearing dark suits with radios clipped to their belts. They moved toward the desk with practiced efficiency, their eyes locked on Darren. The first guard, older with a gray buzz cut, stopped a few feet away. Sir, we need you to come with us. I have a reservation, Darren said evenly. Sir, we're not going to ask twice. Then don't ask. Check the system. Confirm the reservation. Do your job. The second guard, younger, stepped closer. His hand drifted toward his belt. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Darren didn't flinch. He looked past them, toward the growing crowd. Phones were out now. Someone was filming. The easy way, Darren said softly, is for you to check the reservation and apologize. The hard way is whatever you're about to do next. The older guard's jaw tightened. Eric? Eric shook his head. He doesn't have a reservation. He's refusing to leave. That's a lie. The younger guard moved in. Sir, hands out of your pockets. Now. Darren pulled his hands out slowly, palms open, and raised them slightly, not in surrender, but in visibility. He wanted everyone to see. He wanted the cameras to catch it. I am not resisting, Darren said clearly, his voice carrying across the silent lobby. I am a guest. I have a confirmed reservation, and I am being removed because of how I look. The words cut through the room like lightning. The older guard hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. Check the system, Darren said again, his eyes locked on Eric. Right now, in front of everyone, you check the name Cole, Whitman Room, 230. Eric's face went red. I already checked. Check again. The tension was unbearable now. The entire lobby had gone silent. Even the bartender had stopped moving. Eric's hands trembled as he turned back to the computer. He typed something. His eyes scanned the screen, and then his face went white. It's here, he whispered. The older guard frowned. What? The reservation. It's here. Under Cole. 230. Whitman Room. The silence that followed was crushing. Darren lowered his hands slowly. I know, Eric stammered. I don't understand. It wasn't showing up before. Yes, it was. The younger guard shifted uncomfortably. Sir, if there's been a mistake, there hasn't been a mistake, Darren said quietly. There's been a choice. He turned to face the crowd. Dozens of faces stared back at him, some shocked, some embarrassed, some still skeptical. The phones were still recording. My name is Darren Cole, he said, his voice calm and clear. I made a reservation. I confirmed it. I arrived on time, and I was told I was trespassing. Why? No one answered. Because I'm black, Darren continued. Because I walked into this room alone, and someone decided I didn't belong. And instead of checking the system, instead of doing the most basic part of the job, your staff chose to humiliate me in front of all of you. Eric's mouth opened and closed uselessly. Sir, I apologize. There must have been a system error. There was no error. You saw my name. You saw my face. And you made a decision. The older guard cleared his throat. Sir, we're very sorry for the inconvenience. Inconvenience? Darren's voice didn't rise, but it sharpened. You threatened to arrest me. You surrounded me with armed guards. You treated me like a criminal in a room full of witnesses. That's not an inconvenience. That's a violation. Chelsea had gone pale. She looked like she might cry. I didn't mean, she started. Yes, you did. The elevator dinged again. Everyone turned. A tall white man in an impeccable gray suit stepped out, his silver hair combed back, his expression sharp and assessing. He was in his mid-50s, with the kind of presence that made people straighten their spines without realizing it. He moved through the lobby with the confidence of someone who'd never been questioned at a door in his life. His eyes found Darren immediately. Darren, the man said warmly, crossing the room in long strides. I'm so sorry I'm late. Traffic was a nightmare. He extended his hand. Darren shook it, his expression unreadable. No problem, Richard, Darren said evenly. Though we seem to have had a complication. Richard's gaze swept the scene. The security guards, the frozen staff, the phones still recording. His smile vanished. What the hell is going on here? Eric stepped forward, his voice shaking. Mr. Hale, there was a misunderstanding about a reservation. A misunderstanding? Richard's voice dropped to ice. You just threatened to remove my business partner from a club I've been a member of for 15 years? The lobby went silent again. Richard turned to Darren, his eyes scanning him carefully. Are you all right? I'm fine. Did they touch you? No? Did they threaten you? Darren paused. Yes. Richard's jaw tightened. He turned back to Eric, and when he spoke, his voice was deadly quiet. Get your manager. Now. Eric's face went gray. I am the manager. Not anymore. Get someone higher. Right now. Eric fumbled for the phone. Richard stepped closer to Darren, lowering his voice. I'm so sorry. This is unacceptable. It's not your fault. It is. I vouched for this place. I told you it was different. Richard's voice was tight with anger. It was wrong. Darren didn't respond. He just checked his watch again. 4 minutes past the meeting time. The Whitman room was still waiting. A woman in a sleek black pantsuit emerged from the back office, her expression carefully neutral. Her name tag read Sandra Voss, General Manager. Mr. Hale, she said smoothly, extending a hand. It's good to see you again. Richard ignored her hand. Sandra, what just happened here is the most disgraceful thing I've witnessed in decades of membership. My colleague made a legitimate reservation, arrived on time, and was treated like a criminal. Why? Sandra's eyes flicked to Darren, then back to Richard. I assure you, Mr. Hale, if there was a misunderstanding, there was no misunderstanding. Your staff saw a black man and assumed he didn't belong. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Sandra's composure cracked, just slightly. That's a very serious allegation. It's a fact. Mr. Hale, I'm sure there's been. Pull the security footage, right now. Let's see exactly what happened. Sandra hesitated, just for a moment, but it was enough. I'll need to file a request. No, Darren said quietly. Everyone turned to him. You don't need to file anything. The footage is already online. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and turned it towards Sandra. A live stream was playing, shot from someone's phone in the crowd, already racked up with thousands of views. The comments were rolling in faster than anyone could read them. "This is disgusting. Sue them. I'm canceling my membership." Sandra's face drained of color. "So," Darren said softly, "what happens next is up to you." The room held its breath. Sandra looked at Eric, then at the guards, then at the crowd of witnesses still holding their phones. She straightened, forced a smile, and turned back to Darren. "Mr. Cole, on behalf of the Ascendant Club, I apologize for the way you were treated. This does not reflect our values or our standards. I will personally ensure this matter is investigated and appropriate action will be taken." Darren didn't smile. "Appropriate action?" "Yes, disciplinary measures, retraining, policy review." "In other words, nothing." Sandra stiffened. "I assure you we take this very seriously." "No, you don't." Darren's voice was calm, but it cut like steel. "You take your reputation seriously. You take avoiding lawsuits seriously, but you don't take me seriously. And you never did." He turned to Richard. "Let's go." Richard nodded. Gladly. They walked toward the elevator together, leaving Sandra frozen at the desk, leaving Eric pale and trembling, leaving the crowd murmuring in their wake. As the elevator doors began to close, Darren glanced back one last time. His eyes met Chelsea's. She looked away. The doors shut. Inside the elevator, Richard let out a long breath. "Jesus, Darren, I don't even know what to say." "Don't say anything. Just cancel your membership." Richard blinked. "What?" "You heard me. Cancel it, today." "Darren, they humiliated me, Richard, in front of a room full of people, and they're going to call it a misunderstanding, issue some bland apology, and move on, unless we make it cost them something." Richard studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "All right, I'll cancel." "Good." The elevator descended in silence. When they reached the ground floor, Darren's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. A text from an unknown number. Is this really Darren Cole, CEO of Meridian Hospitality Group? Darren's expression didn't change. He pocketed the phone and stepped into the lobby. Behind him, 32 floors above, the whispers were already starting to spread, and the footage was going viral. By the time Darren walked out onto the sidewalk, the video had been shared 10,000 times. By the time he reached his car, it was on the local news. By the time he sat down in the driver's seat and closed the door, his phone was ringing nonstop. Reporters, colleagues, investors, all asking the same question. What are you going to do? Darren didn't answer. He started the engine, pulled into traffic, and drove. Because the answer wasn't something he could say in a soundbite. The answer was something the Ascendant Club and everyone watching was about to learn the hard way. Darren Cole wasn't just a guest. He was the man who owned the building. The drive back to Darren's office took 23 minutes, but it felt like seconds. His mind was already 3 steps ahead, calculating angles, measuring consequences, anticipating moves. The phone kept buzzing in the cup holder, messages, emails, notifications piling up faster than he could track. He ignored them all. There would be time for that later. Right now, he needed to think. The Meridian Hospitality Group headquarters occupied the top 4 floors of a steel and glass tower in the financial district. Darren had built the company from nothing, starting with a single boutique hotel in Brooklyn 15 years ago, then expanding into luxury properties, corporate real estate, and eventually full ownership of some of Manhattan's most prestigious commercial buildings, including the one that housed the Ascendant Club. He'd bought it 3 years ago as part of a portfolio acquisition. The building itself was profitable. High-end tenants, long-term leases, minimal vacancies. The club had been part of the package, an old money institution with a 100-year history and a membership list that read like a who's who of American power. Darren had left it alone, let it run itself. He'd never even been inside. Until today. He parked in the underground garage and took the private elevator straight to his office on the 47th floor. His assistant Maya looked up from her desk as he walked past, her eyes wide with concern. "Mr. Cole, your phone's been ringing off the hook. I know. The board's asking for a statement. Legal wants to talk. And there's a reporter from the Times waiting in reception. Darren stopped. Tell the reporter I'll have a statement by end of day. Tell legal I want a full contract review of every tenant in the Lexington Tower, especially the Ascendant Club. And tell the board I'll brief them tomorrow morning. Maya nodded, scribbling notes. Is there anything else you need? Pull every piece of documentation we have on the club. Lease agreements, operating contracts, membership policies, everything. I want it on my desk in an hour. Yes, sir. Darren stepped into his office and closed the door. The space was minimalist, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a sleek glass desk, black leather chairs. No photos, no personal items. Just clean lines and open sky. He sat down, opened his laptop, and searched for the video. It was everywhere. The footage had been posted by someone named @Jessica Manhattan, a food blogger with 70,000 followers. The caption read, "Just witnessed the most insane act of racism at the Ascendant Club. This man had a reservation and they called security on him. This is 2024. Unacceptable." The video was shaky, filmed from across the lobby, but it captured everything. Darren standing calmly at the desk. Eric Donovan insisting there was no reservation. The security guards closing in. And Darren's voice, clear and steady, cutting through the chaos. "I am being removed because of how I look." The comments were brutal. "This is why I'll never set foot in places like this. That manager should be fired immediately. Someone find out who this man is. He deserves justice." Update. He's the CEO of Meridian Hospitality. He owns the building. This is about to get good. That last comment had 16,000 likes. Darren closed the laptop and leaned back in his chair. His jaw was tight, his pulse steady. He wasn't angry, not yet. Anger was reactive, impulsive, uncontrolled. What he felt was colder, sharper. It was clarity. They had made a choice. Now he would make his. His phone buzzed again. This time he answered. "Richard." Richard Hale's voice was tense. "Darren, have you seen the video?" "I have. It's exploding. Every news outlet is picking it up. My phone's been ringing nonstop. Clients, colleagues, everyone wants to know what happened." "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That you were humiliated for no reason other than the color of your skin." Darren was silent for a moment. "And what do they say?" "Most are horrified. A few are defensive. One guy actually tried to suggest you were overreacting." "Let me guess. He's still a member." "Not anymore. I made sure of that." Richard paused. "Darren, I canceled my membership. Just got off the phone with Sandra Voss." "How'd she take it?" "About as well as you'd expect. She tried to convince me to reconsider, said they're implementing immediate changes, launching a full investigation. I told her it was too late." "Good. But here's the thing, I'm not the only one. At least a dozen members have canceled in the last hour. The club's in full damage control mode. They're terrified." Darren's expression didn't change. "They should be. What are you going to do?" "What I have to." Richard let out a breath. "Darren, be careful. I know you're furious. Hell, I'm furious. But these people have power, influence, lawyers. If you go after them publicly..." "I'm not going after them, Richard. I'm holding them accountable. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes." Darren's voice was quiet but firm. "Because I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in change." Richard was silent for a long moment. "All right. Whatever you need, I'm with you." "I know. That's why I called you in the first place." They hung up. Darren stood and walked to the windows. The city stretched out below him. Millions of people, thousands of buildings, endless motion. Somewhere out there, the video was still spreading. Somewhere out there, people were watching, judging, choosing sides. And somewhere 32 floors above the street, the Ascendant Club was realizing it had made a catastrophic mistake. An hour later, Maya knocked on his door and entered with a thick folder. "Everything we have on the Ascendant Club." Darren took it and flipped it open. Lease agreement, renewed 2 years ago. Operating licenses, all current. Membership policies, last updated in 2019. Insurance documents. Tax filings. Code compliance reports. He read through it all slowly, methodically, his eyes scanning every clause, every line. And then he found it. Buried in the membership policies, page 17, subsection 4. The Ascendant Club reserves the right to deny entry to any individual whose presence may disrupt the comfort or security of its members. Darren read it again. Then he picked up his phone and called the head of his legal team. Marcus, I need you to look at something. 20 minutes later, Marcus Chen was sitting across from Darren's desk, reading the same document. Marcus was in his early 40s, sharp-eyed and sharper-minded, the kind of attorney who could find loopholes in concrete. This is a problem, Marcus said finally. I know. This clause is deliberately vague. Disrupt the comfort or security. That's subjective as hell. It's basically a license to discriminate. Can we challenge it? Marcus leaned back, tapping his pen against his knee. We could, but it's not technically illegal. Private clubs have broad discretion when it comes to membership and access. As long as they're not explicitly violating civil rights laws, they did violate them. They profiled me. They denied me access based on race. I agree. But proving that in court is a different story. They'll claim it was a reservation error, a misunderstanding, human error. They'll apologize, offer a settlement, and move on. I don't want a settlement. Marcus raised an eyebrow. What do you want? Darren was quiet for a moment. I want them to change. Completely. Or I want them gone. Gone as in evicted? If necessary. Marcus let out a low whistle. Darren, evicting a tenant isn't easy, even if you own the building. Their lease is airtight. We'd need cause, breach of contract, violation of terms, something concrete. Then find it. I'll try. But you need to be prepared for the fallout. If you go public with this, if you start a legal battle, it's going to get ugly. The club has powerful friends, wealthy members, influence in places we can't even see. I know. And they're going to fight back. Hard. Darren met his gaze, steady and unflinching. Let them. Marcus studied him for a long moment, then nodded. All right, I'll start digging. As Marcus left, Darren's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from an unknown number. Mr. Cole, this is Sandra Voss. I'd like to speak with you privately about what happened today. Please call me at your earliest convenience. Darren stared at the message. Then he deleted it. By 6 o'clock, the story had made national news. CNN ran a segment titled Discrimination at an Elite Manhattan Club, featuring the viral video and commentary from civil rights advocates. MSNBC brought on a panel to discuss systemic racism in private institutions. Fox News ran a counter segment questioning whether the incident was being blown out of proportion. Darren watched it all from his office, his expression unreadable. At 7, Maya knocked again. Sir, there's someone here to see you. She says it's urgent. Who? Her name is Nicole Barrett. She's a former employee of the Ascendant Club. Darren frowned. Send her in. Nicole Barrett was young, maybe 26, with dark curly hair and nervous eyes. She wore jeans and a hoodie, clutching a worn tote bag in both hands. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Mr. Cole, she said, her voice shaking slightly. I'm sorry to just show up like this, but I saw the video and I had to talk to you. Darren gestured to the chair across from his desk. Sit. She sat, her hands still gripping the bag. I worked at the club for 3 years, front desk, same position as the woman in the video, Chelsea. What happened? Nicole took a breath. I was fired 6 months ago. They said it was for performance issues, but that wasn't true. The real reason was that I pushed back on their policies. What policies? The screening process, the way they treated guests. There was an unwritten rule. If someone didn't look like they belonged, we were supposed to stall them, ask for ID, double-check reservations, find a reason to delay them until a member showed up to vouch for them. Darren's jaw tightened. And if no one showed up, we'd ask them to leave. Politely, at first. Then security got involved. How often did this happen? Nicole looked down at her hands. More than it should have. And it was always the same type of people. Black guests, Latino guests, anyone who didn't fit the club's image. Did you report this? I tried. I went to Sandra Voss, told her it was discriminatory. She said I was being overly sensitive, that the club had a right to maintain its standards. And then she fired you. Nicole nodded. 2 weeks later. She made up some excuse about a scheduling conflict I didn't handle properly, but we both knew why. Darren leaned forward. Why are you telling me this now? Because I saw what they did to you, and I realized I can't stay silent anymore. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick stack of papers. I kept records, emails, incident reports, logs of guests who were turned away. I documented everything. She placed the papers on Darren's desk. He picked them up slowly, flipping through page after page. Dates, names, descriptions. A pattern so clear it was impossible to ignore. Can I use these? Darren asked quietly. That's why I brought them. You know they'll come after you. Legal threats, intimidation, maybe worse. Nicole's voice was steady now. I know, but someone has to stand up to them. And if you're willing to fight, then so am I. Darren looked at her for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. Thank you, Nicole. She shook it, her grip firm. After she left, Darren called Marcus back into his office and handed him the documents. Read these, all of them, and tell me if we have a case. Marcus spent the next 2 hours going through the records. When he finally looked up, his expression was grim. This is damning, he said. If even half of this is accurate, the club has been systematically violating anti-discrimination laws for years. Can we prove it? With Nicole's testimony and these records, absolutely. But Darren, if we go this route, it's not just about eviction anymore. We're talking about a civil rights lawsuit, federal investigation, public scandal. Good. Marcus hesitated. Are you sure? Because once we start this, there's no going back. Darren's eyes were hard. I'm sure. That night, Darren drafted a statement. It was short, direct, and unapologetic. Today, I was denied access to a private club in a building I own because of the color of my skin. This was not a misunderstanding. It was not a system error. It was a choice made by individuals who decided I didn't belong based solely on how I look. This kind of discrimination is not isolated. It is systemic, and it ends now. I'm calling for a full investigation into the Ascendant Club's practices, policies, and leadership. I'm demanding accountability, transparency, and immediate reform. And if those demands are not met, I will use every legal tool at my disposal to ensure that institutions like this can no longer hide behind tradition and privilege. Change is not optional. It is inevitable. He sent it to Maya with instructions to release it to the press first thing in the morning. Then he sat back in his chair and looked out at the city one more time. The lights were starting to come on across Manhattan, thousands of them, glowing against the darkening sky. The city never stopped moving, never stopped changing, and neither would he. By the time the sun rose the next morning, the statement had been picked up by every major outlet. The Ascendant Club's phone lines were jammed with calls. Members were resigning in droves. Protesters were gathering outside the building. And deep in the marble lobby on the 32nd floor, Sandra Voss sat in her office, staring at her computer screen, watching her career disintegrate in real time. She reached for her phone and dialed a number she'd hoped she'd never have to call. We need to talk, she said when the line connected. This is getting out of control. The voice on the other end was cold and measured. Then control it. I can't. Not anymore. Cole's not backing down. He's escalating. Then we escalate too. Sandra closed her eyes. What do you want me to do? Whatever it takes. He's just one man. We're an institution, and institutions don't lose. The line went dead. Sandra sat in the silence, her hands trembling. But somewhere across the city, Darren Cole was already preparing his next move. And this time, he wasn't coming alone. The boardroom on the 48th floor was already full when Darren arrived at 8 the next morning. 10 faces turned toward him as he entered. Investors, senior executives, the backbone of Meridian Hospitality Group. They'd built this company together, weathered economic crashes and industry shakeups, turned a single property into an empire. But the tension in the room this morning was different, thicker, more volatile. Darren took his seat at the head of the table and didn't waste time with pleasantries. I know why you're here, he said. You want to know if I'm going to back down. Thomas Garrett, the company's CFO and longest-serving board member, leaned forward. He was 62, silver-haired, with the kind of old-school business instincts that had kept Meridian profitable through 2 recessions. Darren, We're not asking you to back down. We're asking you to be strategic. This situation is escalating faster than anyone anticipated. Good. Good? Thomas's eyebrows shot up. Darren, we've had 3 major investors call us in the past 12 hours asking if the company is stable. Our stock took a hit yesterday. The press is camped outside the Lexington Tower. This isn't just about you anymore. It's affecting all of us. It was always about all of us, Darren said quietly. That's the point. Across the table, Jennifer Park, the VP of Operations, spoke up. She was younger than most of the board, barely 40, but she'd earned her seat through results, not tenure. Darren, I saw the video. What they did was inexcusable. But if we move forward with a lawsuit, we're looking at years of litigation, legal fees, negative publicity. Is that really the fight you want? It's not about what I want. It's about what's right. Right doesn't always win in court, Thomas said bluntly. The Ascendant Club has resources, powerful members. They'll drag this out, make it expensive, make it personal. Let them.
Was?
Jennifer exchanged a glance with Thomas. Darren, we're on your side. You know that, but we have a responsibility to the company, to our employees, to our shareholders. We can't afford to let this become a prolonged battle that damages our reputation. Our reputation? Darren's voice was still calm, but there was steel beneath it. What reputation is that, Jennifer? The one where we own buildings that house discriminatory institutions? Where we profit from spaces that treat people like me as intruders? Is that the reputation you're worried about protecting? The room went silent. Jennifer looked down at her hands. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? I meant that we have to think about the bigger picture, about the company's future. I am thinking about the future, Darren said, and the future is accountability. If we don't stand up now, if we let this slide because it's inconvenient or expensive or uncomfortable, then what are we really building here? Just another corporation that talks about values but doesn't live them. Thomas cleared his throat. No one's saying we shouldn't address this, but there are ways to handle it quietly. Settle with the club, negotiate policy changes, make it go away without turning it into a public war. It's already public, and it should be. Why? Thomas's frustration was showing now. Why does this have to be a crusade? You could resolve this behind closed doors, take the moral high ground, and move on. Instead, you're choosing the most difficult, most visible, most damaging path. Why? Darren leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady. Because behind closed doors is where these problems hide. That's where discrimination thrives. In the quiet, the unspoken, the things we all know happen but never talk about. I'm done being quiet. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken tensions. Finally, Marcus Chen, who'd been sitting quietly at the far end of the table, spoke up. The board has a right to be concerned about risk, but they also need to understand what we're dealing with. Nicole Barrett's documents show a pattern of discriminatory behavior going back at least 5 years. If we don't act, someone else will. A civil rights group, a federal agency. And when that happens, Meridian will be implicated as the building owner who did nothing. Thomas frowned. Are we legally liable? Potentially. We own the property. We lease it to them. If a court determines we knew or should have known about the discrimination and failed to act, we could face serious consequences. But we didn't know, Jennifer protested. We do now, Darren said, and what we do next defines us. Thomas rubbed his temples. What exactly are you proposing? I want to terminate the Ascendant Club's lease. The room erupted. That's impossible, Jennifer said immediately. Their lease runs through 2028. It's ironclad. No lease is ironclad if the tenant violates the terms. Marcus nodded. There's a morality clause. Section 12, paragraph 3. It states that the landlord can terminate the lease if the tenant engages in activities that damage the reputation or integrity of the property. That's incredibly vague, Thomas said. It'll never hold up in court. Maybe not on its own, Marcus replied. But combined with Nicole's testimony, the video evidence, and the documented pattern of discrimination, we have a strong case that the club's actions have materially harmed the property's reputation. Jennifer shook her head. Even if we win, the club will sue for wrongful eviction. We're talking about millions in legal fees. I'll cover them personally, Darren said. Everyone stared at him. You'll what? Thomas asked. I'll cover the legal fees out of my own pocket. This fight is mine, not the company's. I won't let Meridian take the financial hit. Thomas leaned back, stunned. Darren, we're talking about potentially $10, $15 million. I know what we're talking about. That's insane. That's necessary. Darren's voice didn't waver. I'm not asking the company to sacrifice anything. I'm asking for your support while I do what needs to be done. Jennifer looked at him for a long moment. You're really willing to risk everything for this? Everything's already at risk. We just didn't see it until yesterday. The board members exchanged glances. Calculations were being made, loyalties tested, futures weighed. Finally, Thomas spoke. If we support this, if we move forward with eviction proceedings, there's no turning back. The club will fight. Their members will fight. This will get uglier than anything we've faced. I know. And you're prepared for that? I am. Thomas looked around the table, reading the room. Then he let out a long breath. All right, I'll support it, but on one condition. What condition? You bring in an outside PR firm, someone who specializes in crisis management. Because if we're going to war, we need to control the narrative. Darren nodded slowly. Agreed. Jennifer raised her hand slightly. I'm in too, but I want regular updates, weekly. If this starts to crater the company, we need to be able to pivot. Fair enough. One by one, the other board members voiced their support. Some enthusiastic, some reluctant, but all unanimous. When the meeting finally ended, Darren stood and looked at each of them. Thank you. I know this isn't easy, but it's right. Thomas lingered as the others filed out. Darren, can I speak with you privately? They waited until the room was empty. Thomas closed the door and turned to face him. I've known you for 15 years. I've watched you build this company from nothing. You're one of the smartest, most disciplined leaders I've ever worked with. But this, he shook his head. This feels personal. It is personal. That's what worries me. Personal clouds judgment. Makes us reactive instead of strategic. I'm not being reactive. I've thought this through. Have you? Thomas's voice was gentle but firm. Because from where I'm sitting, you're about to spend millions of dollars and risk your reputation on a fight that could be resolved quietly. And I'm wondering if this is really about the club or if it's about something else. Darren was quiet for a moment. What do you think it's about? I think it's about every door you've had to prove yourself at. Every room where you've been the only black face. Every time someone looked at you and saw a threat instead of a colleague. Thomas paused. I think this is about a lifetime of indignities, and this one finally broke something open. Darren's jaw tightened. And what if it is? Then I understand. But understanding doesn't change the reality. This fight will cost you, financially, emotionally, maybe professionally, and I need to know you're prepared for that. I am. Thomas studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, then I'm with you. All the way. They shook hands. As Thomas left, Darren stood alone in the boardroom, looking out at the city. The sun was higher now, casting sharp shadows across the buildings. Somewhere out there, the Ascendant Club was preparing its defense. Somewhere out there, lives were about to change. His phone buzzed, a text from Maya. Sandra Voss is downstairs. She's demanding to see you. Darren smiled just slightly. Then he texted back. Send her up. 5 minutes later, Sandra Voss walked into his office. She looked like she'd aged a decade overnight. Her hair pulled back severely, her makeup unable to hide the dark circles under her eyes. She carried a leather portfolio and wore an expression that tried for confidence but landed somewhere closer to desperation. Mr. Cole, she said, extending her hand. Thank you for seeing me. Darren didn't shake it. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Sit. She sat, placing the portfolio carefully on her lap. I want to start by apologizing again for what happened. It was unacceptable, and I take full responsibility. Do you? Yes, completely. Then who's been fired? Sandra blinked. I'm sorry? You said you take full responsibility, so who's been terminated? Eric Donovan, Chelsea, the security guards? We're conducting a thorough internal review. That's not what I asked. Sandra's composure cracked slightly. These things take time. Due process, union regulations, legal considerations. It's been less than 24 hours, and you've already determined it was unacceptable. So why is everyone still employed? Because we need to investigate properly before taking action. You need to protect yourselves legally before taking action. There's a difference. Sandra's voice hardened. Mr. Cole, I understand you're angry. You have every right to be, but I'm here to find a solution, not to be interrogated. What solution? She opened the portfolio and pulled out a document. The Ascendant Club is prepared to offer you a formal apology, a full refund of your reservation fee, and complimentary membership for life. Additionally, we're implementing immediate policy changes. Mandatory diversity training for all staff, revised guest protocols, and the creation of an oversight committee to ensure incidents like this never happen again. Darren didn't touch the document. And in exchange, we ask that you release a joint statement with us, acknowledging our commitment to change and moving forward constructively. In other words, you want me to make this go away. I want us to resolve this like adults. Darren leaned forward. Adults don't offer memberships to people they just tried to have arrested. Adults don't hide behind internal reviews when they know exactly what happened. And adults sure as hell don't think a piece of paper in some PR language makes up for systematic discrimination. Sandra's jaw tightened. What do you want, Mr. Cole? To destroy the club? To see everyone lose their jobs? To burn it all down? I want accountability. Real accountability. Not a cosmetic fix designed to protect your reputation. We're offering real change. You're offering words. I want action. Then tell me what action you'll accept. Darren stood and walked to the window. The Lexington Tower was visible from here, its glass facade reflecting the morning sun. Somewhere on the 32nd floor, the club was still operating, still serving members, still existing as if nothing had changed. I want you to resign, Darren said quietly. Sandra's face went white. What? You heard me. Resign. Today. That's completely unreasonable. Is it? You're the general manager. You set the tone. You created the culture where staff felt comfortable profiling guests. This happened on your watch. I didn't tell them to do what they did. No, you just fostered an environment where they thought it was acceptable. Darren turned to face her. You said you take full responsibility. Prove it. Sandra stood, her hands shaking. If I resign, the board will fight you twice as hard. They'll see it as an attack. Let them. You're making a mistake. The mistake was already made. I'm just correcting it. Sandra grabbed her portfolio and headed for the door. But she stopped before leaving, turning back one last time. You think you're some kind of hero, don't you? Fighting the good fight, standing up for justice. But you're just one man, and we're an institution. We've survived for 100 years, and we'll survive you. Darren's voice was calm. Maybe, but you'll never be the same. She left without another word. Darren returned to his desk and picked up his phone. He called Marcus. She rejected everything? Completely, Darren confirmed, and I rejected her offer. What did she offer? Complimentary membership and a joint statement. Marcus laughed bitterly. Tone Deaf doesn't even begin to cover it. All right, I'll start drafting the eviction notice. We'll need to file it formally, serve them within the week. Do it. Darren, once we file, this becomes a legal war. You understand that? I understand. And you're still in? All the way. After hanging up, Darren made one more call. This one to Nicole Barrett. Nicole, it's Darren Cole. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Of course. Are you prepared to testify in court, under oath, against the club? There was a long pause. When Nicole spoke again, her voice was steady. Yes, I am. They'll come after you, your credibility, your character, your past. They'll try to destroy you. I know, but I can't stay silent anymore. If testifying helps stop this, then it's worth it. Thank you, Nicole. Don't thank me yet. We haven't won anything. We will. That afternoon, news broke that 12 more Ascendant Club members had resigned. By evening, the number had climbed to 30. Social media was on fire with the hashtag #ShutItDown. Protesters had set up outside the Lexington Tower with signs reading "Justice for Darren Cole" and "Dismantle Discrimination." At 6 o'clock, Darren stood in the lobby of his building, looking through the glass doors at the crowd gathering outside. Maya approached him quietly. "Sir, there's a reporter from the Washington Post asking for an interview, and CNN wants you on tonight." "Not yet," Darren said. "Let them keep talking. The more attention this gets, the harder it is for the club to hide." "What about the board? Are they still supportive?" "For now, but that could change if things get messier." Maya hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Why are you doing this? You could settle quietly, move on, avoid all this drama. Why choose the harder path?" Darren looked at her. "Because the harder path is the only one that leads somewhere worth going." She nodded slowly. "Then I hope you get there." By midnight, Sandra Voss's resignation was announced. The statement was brief and carefully worded, citing personal reasons and a desire to allow new leadership to guide the club forward. But everyone knew the truth. Darren read the news on his phone while sitting in his living room, a glass of bourbon untouched on the table beside him. The apartment was quiet, the city glowing beyond the windows. He should have felt victorious. Instead, he felt tired. His phone rang. Richard Hale. "Did you see?" Richard asked. "I saw. That's a major win, Darren." Sandra was the face of the club. With her gone, they're vulnerable. They were always vulnerable. Now they're just exposed. What's next? Marcus files the eviction notice tomorrow. After that, it's up to the courts. Richard was quiet for a moment. "Are you okay?" Darren closed his eyes. "I don't know. This is taking a toll, isn't it?" "It's necessary." "That doesn't make it easy." "No, it doesn't." They talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. Darren sat in the silence, the weight of the past 48 hours pressing down on him. He thought about the video, the boardroom, Sandra's face when he told her to resign. He thought about all the doors he'd walked through in his life, all the rooms where he'd had to prove himself, all the moments when someone looked at him and saw something other than what he was. And he thought about what came next. Because this wasn't over, not even close. The club would fight back. Their lawyers would file motions, their members would rally support, their allies would emerge from the shadows. This was just the beginning of a war that would test everything he'd built. But Darren Cole had never backed down from a fight. And he wasn't about to start now. The eviction notice was served at 9 o'clock on a Thursday morning, exactly 1 week after the incident. Marcus personally delivered it to the club's interim management team, a trio of board members who'd been scrambling to hold things together since Sandra's departure. Darren watched the whole thing unfold through security camera feeds from his office. Marcus's briefcase in one hand, legal documents in the other, his expression carved from granite. The response came faster than anyone expected. By noon, the Ascendant Club had retained Crawford and Pierce, one of Manhattan's most aggressive litigation firms. By 2 o'clock, they'd filed an emergency injunction to halt the eviction proceedings. By 4, the story was on every major news outlet. Darren sat in his office reading the club's official statement, delivered through their new attorney, a man named Douglas Crawford, who'd made his reputation defending corporations against discrimination lawsuits and winning. The statement was a masterclass in deflection. It expressed deep regret over the incident, emphasized the club's century-long commitment to excellence and inclusivity, highlighted Sandra Voss's resignation as evidence of accountability, and characterized the eviction attempt as a vindictive overreach by a landlord seeking to exploit a single unfortunate misunderstanding for financial and political gain. The last paragraph was the knife. Mr. Cole's actions suggest this is less about justice and more about a personal vendetta. The Ascendant Club has served this city's business community for over 100 years. We will not allow one man's anger to destroy an institution that has supported thousands of professionals, charitable organizations, and civic initiatives. We will fight this eviction with every legal resource at our disposal. Maya knocked and entered without waiting. "Sir, Douglas Crawford is holding a press conference in 20 minutes. CNN, MSNBC, Fox, all the majors are covering it live." "Good. Let him talk." "You don't want to respond?" "Not yet. Let them make their case first. I want to see how far they're willing to go." She hesitated. The phones haven't stopped. Reporters, activists, members of the club wanting to go on record. There's even a petition circulating online calling for a federal investigation into the club's practices. It has over 200,000 signatures. Darren looked up. Who started it? A civil rights organization, the Coalition for Equity in Private Spaces. They're calling this a landmark case. It might be. Maya shifted her weight, something she only did when uncomfortable. Sir, can I speak freely? Always. People are choosing sides, hard sides. I've seen the social media threads, the think pieces, the opinion columns. Some people see you as a hero standing up against systemic racism. Others see you as a bitter executive abusing his power. There's no middle ground anymore. There never is in fights like this. But it's getting personal. They're digging into your past, your business dealings, looking for anything they can use against you. Let them dig. I've got nothing to hide. What about the people around you? Your employees, your business partners, your friends? They're getting dragged into this too. Darren's expression softened slightly. Is someone bothering you? Not me. But I've heard things. Staff members getting harassed online, investors being pressured to distance themselves from Meridian. One of the junior associates got recognized at a restaurant and someone threw a drink at him because he works for you. Darren's jaw tightened. Who? David Chen, from accounting. He's okay, just shaken up. I want to talk to him, personally. I'll set it up. After she left, Darren turned on the television. Douglas Crawford's press conference was just beginning. The attorney stood outside the Lexington Tower, flanked by 3 Ascendant Club board members, all of them wearing dark suits and grave expressions. Behind them, a small group of club supporters held signs. Save our heritage. Stop the witch hunt. Due process matters. Crawford was in his late 50s, silver-haired and sharp-featured, with the kind of commanding presence that made juries pay attention. He stepped up to the microphone cluster and didn't waste time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. I'm Douglas Crawford, representing the Ascendant Club in the matter of the wrongful eviction proceedings initiated by Meridian Hospitality Group. I'm here today to set the record straight about what really happened last week and to expose this action for what it truly is, a gross abuse of power masquerading as social justice. Darren leaned forward. Crawford continued, his voice measured and authoritative. Let me be clear. What happened to Mr. Cole was unacceptable. A reservation error occurred, compounded by poor judgment from staff members who have since been disciplined. The club took immediate corrective action. The general manager resigned. New policies were implemented. Training protocols were enhanced. We did everything right in response to a mistake. He paused for effect. But that wasn't enough for Mr. Cole. Instead of accepting our accountability and our commitment to change, he chose to weaponize this incident. He chose to leverage his position as building owner to punish an institution that dared to inconvenience him. He chose vengeance over justice. The reporters started shouting questions, but Crawford raised his hand. The Ascendant Club has served this city for over a century. We've hosted charity galas that raise tens of millions for worthy causes. We've provided networking opportunities for young professionals from all backgrounds. We've been a cornerstone of New York's business community. And yes, we made a mistake. But one mistake does not erase 100 years of contribution. One error does not justify destroying an institution that employs 75 people and serves a community of over 3,000 members. He gestured to the board members behind him. These individuals represent the leadership that will guide the club forward. They're committed to reform, to transparency, to ensuring nothing like this ever happens again. But they can't do that if Mr. Cole succeeds in evicting us from our home. This eviction is not about accountability. It's about power. It's about one man deciding that his personal grievances matter more than due process, more than jobs, more than community. Crawford's voice dropped, taking on a tone of righteous indignation. We will fight this eviction. We will prove in court that our lease is valid, that our response was appropriate, and that this action is nothing more than retaliation. And we will win, because the law is on our side. Thank you. The questions erupted immediately. Mr. Crawford, how do you respond to the documents showing a pattern of discrimination? We're reviewing those allegations thoroughly. If any policies were improperly applied, we'll address them. But unverified documents provided by a disgruntled former employee don't constitute proof of systematic discrimination. What about the video? It clearly shows Mr. Cole being profiled. The video shows a reservation error being handled poorly. It does not show intentional racial profiling. Context matters. The Civil Rights Coalition is calling for a federal investigation. Let them call for whatever they want. We welcome scrutiny because we have nothing to hide. Darren turned off the television. His phone was already ringing. Marcus. You watching this circus? Marcus asked. I watched enough. Crawford's good. He's framing this as David versus Goliath, with the club as the underdog. That's going to resonate with people who think you're overreaching. People thought that about every civil rights case in history. Didn't make them wrong. True. But we need to be strategic. Crawford's painting you as vindictive and power-hungry. We need to counter that narrative. How? By showing this isn't personal, by demonstrating the pattern. Nicole's testimony will help, but we need more. We need other victims to come forward. We need to prove this was systematic, not isolated. How do we find them? We already are. I've got a team reaching out to former guests, employees, anyone who might have experienced similar treatment. And the Civil Rights Coalition is helping. They're collecting statements, building a database. But Darren, here's the thing. Not everyone wants to come forward. Some people are scared. Others just want to move on. We can't force them. I'm not trying to force anyone. I'm trying to show the truth. Then let's make sure the truth is loud enough to cut through Crawford's spin. After hanging up, Darren opened his laptop and started reading the online response to Crawford's press conference. The internet was exactly as Maya had described, viciously divided. Some comments supported him unconditionally. Others accused him of being a race baiter exploiting a minor incident for attention. The vitriolic ones were the worst, anonymous profiles spewing hatred, calling him everything from a liar to far worse slurs he refused to let penetrate. But mixed in with the noise were other voices, quieter, more thoughtful. One comment caught his attention. I was denied entry to the Ascendant Club 3 years ago. Same situation. I had a reservation, I was dressed professionally, but they made me wait in the lobby for 40 minutes until my white colleague arrived to verify me. I never went back. I never said anything. I thought it was just me. Maybe it wasn't. Darren stared at that comment for a long time. Then he screenshotted it and sent it to Marcus with a single word. More. By evening, Marcus had found 17 similar accounts. People who'd been delayed, questioned, asked for extra verification, or denied entry altogether despite valid reservations. Not all of them were willing to go public, but 12 agreed to provide sworn statements. Marcus compiled them into a supplementary filing for the eviction case. David Chen came to see Darren at 7 o'clock. He was 26, quiet and meticulous, one of the best junior analysts in the company. He walked into Darren's office looking bruised, not physically, but emotionally, the kind of damage that doesn't show on the surface. Mr. Cole, Maya said you wanted to see me. Sit down, David. David sat, his hands folded tightly in his lap. I heard about what happened at the restaurant, Darren said gently. Are you okay? I'm fine. It was just unexpected. Tell me what happened. David took a breath. I was having dinner with some friends. Someone recognized me from the office. I guess they saw me coming in or out of the building. They started yelling, saying I worked for a hypocrite, that you were destroying people's livelihoods for your ego. Then they threw their drink at me and stormed out. Did anyone help you? The restaurant staff did. They apologized, offered to comp our meal. My friends were supportive. But Mr. Cole, honestly, I'm scared. I'm scared this is going to keep happening. I'm scared people are going to target me just because I work here. Darren's chest tightened. David, I'm sorry. You didn't sign up for this. None of you did. Are you going to keep fighting? Yes. David nodded slowly. Then I'm staying. Because what they did to you was wrong. And if fighting back means I get a drink thrown at me sometimes, then that's the price. You don't have to pay that price. Neither do you. But you are. David looked him in the eye. So I will too. Darren stood and walked around the desk. He extended his hand. David shook it. Thank you, Darren said quietly. That means more than you know. After David left, Darren stood alone in his office, the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a physical thing. He'd started this fight believing it was about principle, about justice, about holding an institution accountable. But now it was affecting real people, his employees, his colleagues, strangers who'd shown him support online. The consequences were spreading like ripples in water, touching lives he'd never intended to disturb. His phone buzzed. A text from Richard Hale. "Turn on Channel 7, now." Darren grabbed the remote. Channel 7 was running a special segment titled The Ascendant Club Controversy. Who's right? Two commentators sat across from each other, one black woman in her 40s, one white man in his 50s. The moderator introduced them. Joining us tonight are Dr. Angela Morrison, professor of sociology at Columbia University, and James Whitfield, former federal prosecutor and legal analyst. Dr. Morrison, let's start with you. Do you believe Darren Cole is justified in pursuing this eviction? Dr. Morrison leaned forward, her expression serious. Absolutely. What happened to Mr. Cole wasn't an isolated incident. It was the manifestation of a culture that has existed in elite spaces for generations. These places operate on unspoken rules about who belongs and who doesn't. When Mr. Cole walked into that lobby, the staff made assumptions based on his race. That's not an error. That's bias. And the only way to address systemic bias is to dismantle the systems that enable it. James Whitfield shook his head. With all due respect to Dr. Morrison, that's an oversimplification. Yes, what happened was inappropriate. But calling for the complete destruction of an institution over one incident is disproportionate. The club has apologized, implemented changes, and removed leadership. What more can they reasonably do? They can acknowledge the pattern, Dr. Morrison shot back. Multiple former guests and employees have come forward with similar stories. This wasn't one bad apple. It was a rotten tree. Allegations aren't proof, and even if there were problems, shouldn't reform be the goal rather than obliteration? Reform without consequences is meaningless. The club had 100 years to get this right. They failed. The debate continued, each side becoming more entrenched, until the moderator finally cut to commercial. Darren turned off the television. The conversation would continue without him, in living rooms and boardrooms and comment sections across the country. People would pick sides, draw lines, choose their narratives, and somewhere in all that noise, the truth would either emerge or get buried. His phone rang again. This time it was Thomas Garrett. "Darren, we need to talk about the shareholders." "What about them?" "Three major investors are getting nervous. They're watching the stock price fluctuate, and they're seeing the negative press. They want reassurance that this isn't going to tank the company. Tell them the truth, that we're doing what's right." "They don't care about right. They care about returns." "Then maybe they're not the right investors." Thomas sighed. "Darren, I'm on your side. You know that. But I'm also the CFO, and it's my job to tell you when the financial reality gets complicated. If we lose these investors, if the stock keeps dropping, if this drags on for years, we could be looking at serious problems." "What kind of problems?" "The kind that affect bonuses, hiring, expansion plans, the kind that make people question whether Meridian is stable." "Are we stable?" "For now, but stability isn't permanent. It's something you maintain, and right now we're testing it." Darren closed his eyes. "What do you want me to do, Thomas?" "I want you to be smart. Fight your fight, but protect the company while you do it. Separate your personal battle from the business." "They're not separate, not anymore." "Then make them separate, because if you go down, you'll take a lot of people with you." The line went dead. Darren sat in the darkness of his office, the city lights flickering beyond the windows. He thought about David Chen's face, about the employees who depended on Meridian for their livelihoods, about the investors who saw him as a risk rather than a leader. He thought about all the ways this fight could go wrong, all the people who could get hurt in the crossfire. And then he thought about that moment in the lobby, the security guards closing in, the whispers spreading, the assumption that he didn't belong. He picked up his phone and called Marcus. "File everything," Darren said. "Every statement, every document, every piece of evidence. I want the court to see exactly what the Ascendant Club is. No holding back." "You sure?" "I'm sure." "This is going to get uglier." "I know." "All right, we'll file first thing tomorrow. But Darren, once we do this, there's no negotiating, no settling. We're in it to the end." "That's where I've been since the beginning." He hung up and stood at the window, looking out at the city that had given him everything and demanded even more. Somewhere out there, the Ascendant Club was preparing its defense. Somewhere out there, Douglas Crawford was crafting his next move. Somewhere out there, people were watching, waiting to see who would break first. But Darren Cole had built an empire from nothing. He'd faced down banks that didn't want to loan to him, investors who didn't believe in him, industries that didn't think he belonged. He'd learned long ago that power wasn't given. It was taken, earned, fought for, and he wasn't done fighting yet. The next morning, Marcus filed the complete evidentiary package with the court. 12 sworn statements from former guests describing similar treatment. Nicole Barrett's documented records of discrimination, security footage from other incidents, expert testimony on institutional bias. It was overwhelming, comprehensive, and devastating. The media erupted. The Civil Rights Coalition held a rally outside the Lexington Tower. The Ascendant Club's membership resignations accelerated, 50 more in a single day. And deep in the marble lobby on the 32nd floor, the interim leadership realized they weren't just fighting an eviction anymore. They were fighting for survival. The courtroom on the morning of November 15th was packed beyond capacity. People lined the walls, crowded the gallery, spilled into the hallway outside. Reporters filled the front rows, cameras prohibited but notebooks ready, capturing every word, every gesture, every shift in momentum. This wasn't just about an eviction anymore. It had become something larger, something that transcended property law and lease agreements. It had become a referendum on power, on privilege, on who got to decide what justice looked like. Darren sat at the plaintiff's table with Marcus beside him, both of them in dark suits, expressions calm but focused. Across the aisle, Douglas Crawford commanded his own table with 3 associate attorneys and 2 Ascendant Club board members flanking him. Crawford looked relaxed, almost bored, as if this were just another Tuesday in a career filled with victories. Judge Catherine Brennan entered at precisely 9 o'clock. She was in her early 60s, appointed to the bench 15 years ago after a distinguished career in civil rights law. Her reputation was unimpeachable, fair but exacting, patient but intolerant of theatrics. She took her seat and surveyed the courtroom with sharp eyes. This is a preliminary hearing on the matter of Meridian Hospitality Group versus Ascendant Club Incorporated regarding eviction proceedings. Counsel, are both parties ready to proceed? Marcus stood. Ready, Your Honor. Crawford rose smoothly. Ready, Your Honor. Then let's begin. Mr. Chen, you may present your case. Marcus moved to the center of the room, carrying a folder that contained months of work, countless hours of testimony, evidence that painted a picture impossible to ignore. He didn't rush. He let the silence build. Your Honor, this case is about a pattern, not an incident, not a misunderstanding, but a systematic culture of discrimination that has existed at the Ascendant Club for years. On September 26th, my client, Darren Cole, CEO of Meridian Hospitality Group, was denied access to a private room he had legally reserved. He was questioned, delayed, and ultimately threatened with arrest. Not because he lacked documentation, not because there was any legitimate concern, but because the staff looked at a black man standing alone in their lobby and assumed he didn't belong. Crawford didn't move, but his associate whispered something. Crawford shook his head once, sharply. Marcus continued. The defense will argue this was an isolated error. They will point to apologies, to resignations, to policy changes. But the evidence tells a different story. We have sworn testimony from 12 former guests who experienced identical treatment. We have internal documents showing a pattern of selective screening. We have a former employee who witnessed and documented these practices for 3 years before being terminated for speaking out. This was not an accident. This was policy. And when my client attempted to hold them accountable, the club's response was not contrition. It was retaliation disguised as victimhood. Judge Brennan was writing notes. She didn't look up. Continue. The lease agreement between Meridian and the Ascendant Club contains a morality clause. Section 12, paragraph 3. It states that the landlord may terminate the lease if the tenant engages in conduct that materially harms the reputation or integrity of the property. We contend that the club's discriminatory practices, combined with their public response to this incident, have done exactly that. The property's reputation has been damaged not by my client's pursuit of justice, but by the tenant's refusal to acknowledge wrongdoing. He placed a document on the judge's bench. We're asking this court to uphold the eviction notice and to send a clear message that private institutions operating in commercial spaces cannot hide behind tradition when that tradition is built on exclusion. Marcus sat down. Crawford stood, buttoning his jacket with deliberate precision. He walked to the center of the floor and smiled, not warmly, but confidently, the smile of someone who'd already won and was just waiting for everyone else to realize it. Your Honor, opposing counsel has presented a compelling narrative, but that's all it is, a narrative, a story constructed to justify what is, at its core, a vindictive eviction motivated by personal grievance rather than legitimate legal grounds. He gestured toward Darren without looking at him. Mr. Cole experienced something unfortunate, a reservation error compounded by poor judgment. The club acknowledged this immediately. The general manager resigned within 48 hours. Staff members were disciplined. New protocols were implemented. The club did everything right in response to a mistake. Judge Brennan looked up. Mr. Crawford, are you arguing there was no discrimination? I'm arguing that a single incident, however regrettable, does not constitute a pattern. The testimonies opposing counsel has presented are largely uncorroborated. Former guests with vague recollections of feeling uncomfortable, a disgruntled ex-employee with an axe to grind. None of this rises to the level of systematic discrimination required to justify eviction under the morality clause. What about the internal documents? Policies designed to maintain security and member satisfaction. Interpreted through a biased lens, they can be made to look discriminatory, but context matters, Your Honor. The Ascendant Club serves a high-profile membership. Security protocols exist for legitimate reasons. Security protocols that disproportionately target people of color? Marcus interjected from his seat. Judge Brennan raised her hand. Mr. Chen, you'll have your chance to respond. Mr. Crawford, continue. Crawford nodded. The real issue here is proportionality. The club made a mistake. They corrected it. But that wasn't enough for Mr. Cole. He wanted destruction. He wanted to leverage his position as building owner to punish an institution that inconvenienced him. That's not justice, Your Honor. That's abuse of power. He paused, letting the words settle. The morality clause exists to protect landlords from tenants who engage in illegal or deeply harmful conduct. Running a private club with membership standards, even if those standards are occasionally misapplied, does not meet that threshold. If this eviction is upheld, it sets a dangerous precedent that any landlord can evict any tenant over subjective claims of reputational damage. That's not what the law is designed to do. Crawford returned to his seat, his expression serene. Judge Brennan looked at both tables. I'm going to hear testimony. Mr. Chen, call your first witness. Nicole Barrett took the stand. She was nervous. Darren could see it in the way her hands gripped the armrests, the way her voice wavered slightly when she stated her name. But as Marcus began questioning her, something shifted. The nervousness gave way to resolve. Ms. Barrett, how long did you work at the Ascendant Club? 3 years, from January 2020 to June 2023. And what was your position? Front desk associate. I handled reservations, guest check-ins, member services. During your time there, did you witness discriminatory practices? Yes. Can you describe them? Nicole took a breath. There was an unwritten rule. If someone came to the desk who didn't fit the typical profile, usually that meant if they were Black or Latino, we were supposed to stall. Ask for extra verification. Double-check reservations. Make them wait until a member showed up to vouch for them. Who implemented this rule? It wasn't written down anywhere, but it came from management. Sandra Voss, the general manager, made it clear that we needed to be careful about who we let into the club. She never said it explicitly, but we all understood what she meant. Did you ever object? Yes. In March of 2023, I went to her directly and said I thought the policies were discriminatory. She told me I was being oversensitive and that the club had standards to maintain. What happened after that conversation? I was fired 2 weeks later. She said it was for performance issues, but I'd never had any complaints before. Crawford stood. Objection, Your Honor. The witness is speculating about motive. Judge Brennan looked at Nicole. Did Ms. Voss explicitly state that you were being terminated for objecting to the policies? No, But the timing, then the objection is sustained. Stick to what was actually said, Ms. Barrett. Marcus nodded. Ms. Barrett, did you keep records of incidents you witnessed? Yes, I documented everything, dates, names, descriptions of what happened. And you've provided those records to this court? Yes. Thank you. No further questions. Crawford approached the stand like a predator circling prey. Ms. Barrett, you said you were fired for objecting to discriminatory policies, but isn't it true that you were fired for failing to follow scheduling procedures? That's what they claimed, but yes or no, please. Were you fired for scheduling issues? That's what the termination letter said. And you've sued the club for wrongful termination, haven't you? Nicole hesitated. I filed a complaint, yes. A complaint that's still pending, a complaint that could result in a financial settlement if you win. So you have a direct financial interest in portraying the club negatively, don't you? That's not why I'm here. Just answer the question. Do you stand to gain financially if the club is found to have engaged in discrimination? Possibly, but thank you. No further questions. Nicole left the stand looking shaken. Darren wanted to say something to reassure her, but there was no opportunity. The next witness was already being called. Over the next 3 hours, Marcus called 5 of the former guests who'd provided statements. Each one told a similar story. Being made to wait. Being asked for extra identification. Being treated with suspicion until a white colleague or member arrived. Crawford cross-examined each one with surgical precision, highlighting inconsistencies, questioning memories, suggesting alternative explanations. By noon, the courtroom felt like a battlefield where neither side had gained decisive ground. Judge Brennan called a recess. Darren and Marcus retreated to a conference room down the hall. How do you think it's going? Darren asked. Marcus loosened his tie. Honestly, it could go either way. The judge is taking this seriously, but Crawford's doing exactly what we expected, undermining credibility, casting doubt, making it look like we're reaching. Are we reaching? No, but that doesn't mean we'll win. Eviction cases are hard. The burden of proof is on us, and Crawford knows how to exploit every gap. What about the morality clause? Isn't the reputational damage obvious? It's subjective. The club can argue that any reputational damage was caused by your response, not their actions. It's circular, but it's effective. Darren stood and walked to the window. Outside, protesters were still gathered, some supporting him, some supporting the club. Signs clashed, chants overlapped. The division was palpable even from 12 floors up. What do we need? Darren asked quietly. What's the thing that tips this our way? Marcus was silent for a moment. Something undeniable. Something Crawford can't spin. When court resumed, Marcus called his final witness, Darren himself. The gallery fell silent as Darren took the stand. He placed his hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, and sat down. Marcus stood at the center of the room, his expression serious. Mr. Cole, please tell the court what happened on September 26th. Darren recounted the entire incident, calmly, factually, without embellishment. The reservation, the denial, the security guards, the humiliation. He spoke clearly, his voice steady, his eyes never leaving Marcus. How did this experience make you feel? Angry, but more than that, tired. Tired of having to prove I belong in spaces I've earned the right to occupy. Tired of being seen as a threat instead of a human being. Why did you pursue eviction instead of accepting the club's apology? Darren looked directly at Judge Brennan. Because apologies without accountability are meaningless. Because this wasn't about me, it was about a system that treats people differently based on how they look. And because I have the power to do something about it. If I don't use that power, then what's it for? Crawford stood for cross-examination. Mr. Cole, you own the building where the Ascendant Club operates, correct? Correct. And you've owned it for 3 years? Yes. In those 3 years, did you ever visit the club before September 26th? No. So you had no first-hand knowledge of their operations, their culture, their practices? Not until I experienced them myself. And yet, within 48 hours of this incident, you were calling for eviction. Doesn't that strike you as hasty? No. It strikes me as necessary. Mr. Cole, Isn't it true that you saw an opportunity to turn a personal grievance into a public crusade, to position yourself as a victim in order to gain sympathy and leverage? Darren's jaw tightened. I didn't position myself as anything. I stated facts. The club profiled me. The video proves it. The video shows a reservation error. The video shows me being treated like a criminal. Crawford smiled slightly. You're a powerful man, Mr. Cole. CEO of a major corporation, wealthy, connected. Some might argue that you're using that power to destroy an institution that embarrassed you. Some might argue that. They'd be wrong. Would they? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're leveraging your position as landlord to punish a tenant for a mistake. That's not justice. That's retaliation. Call it whatever you want. I call it accountability. Crawford returned to his seat, satisfied he'd planted the seed of doubt. Judge Brennan looked at both attorneys. Closing statements. Marcus stood. Your Honor, the evidence is clear. The Ascendant Club engaged in discriminatory practices for years. They created an environment where staff felt empowered to profile guests based on race. When confronted, they offered apologies but no real change. The morality clause exists precisely for situations like this, when a tenant's conduct fundamentally undermines the integrity of the property. We ask that you uphold the eviction and send a message that discrimination has consequences. Crawford rose. Your Honor, this case is about one incident blown out of proportion. The club made a mistake and corrected it. Evicting them would be a miscarriage of justice and a dangerous precedent. We ask that you deny the eviction and allow the club to continue serving its community. Judge Brennan closed her notebook. I'll take this under advisement. You'll have my decision within 2 weeks. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell. Darren and Marcus walked out of the courthouse into a wall of cameras and questions. Marcus handled the press while Darren climbed into a waiting car. He sat in the back seat, exhausted, as the city rolled past the windows. His phone buzzed. A text from Richard. How'd it go? Darren typed back, We'll know soon. The waiting was excruciating. 13 days passed like months. Darren threw himself into work, into meetings, into anything that could distract him from the uncertainty. But every night he lay awake wondering which way the decision would go, what it would mean, whether the fight had been worth it. On the 13th day, Maya knocked on his office door at 4 in the afternoon. Sir, Judge Brennan's office just called. She's issuing her decision tomorrow morning at 9. Darren nodded slowly. Thank you. That night, he didn't sleep at all. The courtroom the next morning was even more packed than before. Darren sat at the plaintiff's table, Marcus beside him, both of them silent. Crawford looked confident, almost smug. The Ascendant Club board members whispered nervously among themselves. Judge Brennan entered and the room fell silent. She didn't sit. She stood at the bench, holding a thick document, and looked out at the packed gallery. This case has generated significant public attention, she began. But my decision is not based on public opinion. It's based on law, on evidence, and on the principles that govern our justice system. She opened the document. After reviewing all testimony, all evidence, and all arguments presented by both parties, I find that the plaintiff, Meridian Hospitality Group, has met the burden of proof required to justify eviction under the morality clause of the lease agreement. The courtroom erupted. Crawford was on his feet immediately, objecting, but Judge Brennan raised her hand. The evidence presented shows a clear pattern of discriminatory conduct extending over multiple years. While the defense argues this was isolated mismanagement, the testimony of former employees and guests, combined with documented internal communications, demonstrates that these practices were systemic and condoned by leadership. She looked directly at the defense table. The Ascendant Club's response to Mr. Cole's complaint was insufficient. Resignations and policy revisions, while necessary, do not erase years of harm or absolve the institution of responsibility. The morality clause exists to protect property owners from tenants whose conduct damages the property's integrity. In this case, the club's discriminatory practices have done exactly that. She paused. Therefore, I am upholding the eviction notice. The Ascendant Club has 90 days to vacate the premises. Additionally, I am ordering a full third-party audit of the club's membership and guest policies to be made public within 60 days. This institution has operated in shadows for too long. It's time for transparency. The gavel fell. The courtroom exploded. Reporters rushed for the exits. The Ascendant Club board members sat in stunned silence. Crawford was already on his phone, no doubt preparing an appeal. Darren sat perfectly still. Marcus put a hand on his shoulder. "We won," Marcus said quietly. Darren nodded, but he didn't smile, because winning felt less like triumph and more like the beginning of something even more difficult, the work of actually changing things. Outside the courthouse, Darren stood at a podium facing dozens of cameras. He'd prepared a statement, but standing there looking at the crowd, he set it aside. "Today, a court ruled that discrimination has consequences," he said simply, "that institutions cannot hide behind tradition or influence when that tradition excludes. This was never about revenge. It was about accountability, about saying that the way things have always been done is not good enough anymore." He paused. "The Ascendant Club will appeal. This fight isn't over, but today we proved that one voice, supported by many, can challenge power, can demand better, can win." He stepped away from the microphone and walked to the car, ignoring the shouted questions. 3 months later, the Ascendant Club vacated the 32nd floor of the Lexington Tower. Some members tried to relocate, to start over somewhere else. Others simply let their memberships lapse. The space sat empty for 2 months, while Darren decided what to do with it. In the end, he transformed it into something entirely different, a co-working space for minority entrepreneurs, a place where young business owners could network, pitch investors, build companies, where the doors opened based on merit, not pedigree, where everyone belonged. The grand opening was on a Saturday in March. Hundreds of people showed up, former protesters, journalists, young entrepreneurs eager for the opportunity. Richard Hale was there. Nicole Barrett was there. David Chen from accounting brought his whole family. Darren stood in the middle of the space that had once been a symbol of exclusion and looked around at the faces, every color, every background, every story. Maya approached him quietly. "Sir, there's someone here who wants to meet you." She gestured toward a young black woman in her 20s standing nervously near the entrance. Darren walked over. "Can I help you?" "Mr. Cole, my name is Jasmine. I saw the video last year. What happened to you? And I just wanted to say thank you." "For what?" "For fighting. I've spent my whole life being made to feel like I don't belong in certain spaces. Watching you stand up to them, watching you win, it made me believe that maybe I could too. I'm starting my own tech company. I applied for space here. I got accepted." Her eyes were bright with emotion. "So thank you for showing me that doors don't just open, sometimes you have to kick them down." Darren smiled genuinely this time. "You're going to do great things, Jasmine." As she walked away, Darren stood in the middle of the transformed space and felt something he hadn't felt in months. Not satisfaction, not vindication, but something quieter, something more lasting. Hope. Because the fight wasn't over. It never would be. But today, in this building, in this room that had once represented everything wrong with systems of power, something new was growing. And that was worth everything. Later that night, Darren sat in his office one last time before heading home. His phone buzzed. A news alert. Former Ascendant Club members launch new lawsuit against Darren Cole. He read the headline and set the phone down. There would always be another fight, another challenge, another person who wanted to protect the old ways. But Darren Cole had learned something in that marble lobby 18 months ago. He'd learned that silence was complicity, that comfort was the enemy of change, that power unused was power wasted. He stood, turned off the lights, and walked out. Behind him, the city glowed. Millions of lights, millions of stories. And somewhere in that vast expanse, someone else was standing at a door they'd been told they couldn't enter. Darren hoped they'd remember his story and kick that door down.